Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the program on this Wednesday afternoon on radio.com. We'll be obviously joined by the fan at 6 o'clock, and there's a lot going on today. The Mets are zeroing in on a new manager. We'll save most of that for when we hit the fan at 6 o'clock, but they're close. Looks like Rojas will be there, a new manager, the son of Felipe Alou, and there were few. I have been few more respected baseball players, uh, baseball figures than Felipe Alou, going back to his playing days as a very classy player, very good player. Matter of fact, I was very impressed by Felipe Alou as a player when he came to the Yankees. You know, I met people before a lot of your time, but some of you may remember when Felipe Alou was a Yankee. Um, and as a manager, obviously. And there are some great players, led by, of course, Pedro Martinez, who feel that Felipe Alou saved his career. Pedro Martinez credits Felipe Alou with making his career because he made him a starter. Most people wanted him out of the bullpen. He wanted to be a starter. Felipe wanted him to be a starter, and that's why he loves Felipe Alou, and a lot of players do. So that would give Rojas a leg up from that standpoint. We'll talk more about that a little later on. It's a busy day. As you know, we're still digging out from the Kansas State fight last night, which for a basketball fight was an ugly fight. There's no question about it. D'Souza's been suspended from the Kansas Jayhawks. I mean, it wasn't really, it was a mess. And where it happened on the court and when it happened in the game, the officials really did not get it back under control, and it was a black eye for all involved last night. It was an ugly mess, and not something you expect to see anytime, anywhere on a basketball floor. So that was something they have to dig out from under. And like we said, from a standpoint, any standpoint, it was a very, very ugly incident between two heated rivals who will meet again in a couple of weeks. Having been in that building, that's an intense building. Those are, people don't realize those buildings in that league are extremely hostile for basketball, have been forever. So that is true, and that's always a very intense rivalry. But still, you can't have what that nonsense that went on last night. The story today is basketball. That's why we'll have a basketball guest just a couple of minutes. Brian Gelsiler, who does the Hoop Critic. You'll get him, who does NBA TV and radio. He'll come on. Of course, it's a big night in the NBA. Not only is LeBron in New York, that's not the big thing. They're coming off a bad loss to the Celtics when they were on demand, and the Celtics got everybody back. The Celtics had been beaten by the Suns the other night without Brown and Walker, and Brown and Walker came back, and they beat on the Celtics. They finally had a big win. So the Lakers will be looking to get back to winning ways here after being embarrassed there. They're not at full strength, neither of the Knicks, who will be without Barrett, and probably will be without Morris tonight too. But LeBron comes to the Garden anytime he does. It's a big deal. And, of course, the other story, which is the big story tonight in basketball, is that Zion Williamson will make his debut finally. Half a season later, make his debut, and everyone's hearts pounding because of it. Because hey, this is like we've said many times. The hype machine has been working overtime since the day we heard about this player. So now finally he will. Although it'll be, I'm sure, extremely guarded minutes tonight, and that team has been playing that badly. So. They've been playing okay. They get the Spurs, and there's a lot swirling around the Spurs tonight which we'll get into with Gelsiler when he comes on. There's a lot of talk about the Spurs, who have been very disappointing, and I got to give Gelsiler some grief because he liked them as an over this year. And they got off to a terrible start. They've righted the ship a little bit. Now it sounds like they could be packaging Aldridge and DeRozan and sending them elsewhere, and starting over. So that would end any chance they would have of making any kind of run. They're right now about 5 games under 500, which is anything but Spur-like, as we know. But they play later tonight, and obviously, as we said, all eyes will be on Zion finally beginning. And I'm going to watch a little bit tonight just to see couple minutes of his first game just to see what's going on. And like I said, we know he's going to be good around the basket. We know that. Let's see how expansive his game is. We're starting to move towards the hype week for the Super Bowl. These are usually the lull days after you get the game set up and after you go through that first wave of stories. You then have that lull period where the teams are home game planning. They don't get to the city until next Sunday and Monday. So this is the quiet time right now before everything hits full force next week, and then you go through all the tedious interviews and breakups and everything else next week, which will happen starting Monday. But when you think about it, you know, we all know the storyline of Andy Reid and what this game means to him and how special this will be and everything else. But I was thinking about it earlier today. It's been 15 years since he went to the Super Bowl. It's amazing that it was that long ago because I was thinking about it and I said, I was thinking back to the game with McNabb and the whole thing and McNabb, which, remember that game, they moved the ball well on the Pats. Andy's always moved the ball well on everybody. And that's why I think nobody's shutting Andy down in a big game because nobody does. The Pats have never shut him down in a big game. So he'll move the ball. It's a question of everything else. It's a question about defense. It's a question about mistakes. It's a question about special teams mistakes. They'll be efficient offensively because there's nobody better at preparing a team for a big game than Andy is as far as offense goes. But it was 15 years ago, and they outgained the Pats that day. They moved the ball well. They were 9 of 16 on third down conversion. They just turned the ball over too much. I mean, that was really what it came down to in the 3-point loss. I mean, they had 4 turnovers. And you're not going to win a game like that with 4 turnovers. McNabb had, 3 interceptions and threw the ball a million times because, they had the 10-point lead, the Pats did, and then they had that crazy long drive where they finally scored a touchdown inside 2 minutes where we were wondering what the heck was going on, and it just took forever to get that thing from 10 to 3, as we know, and he wound up throwing so many passes, and, it was just weird what went on, and he was sick, and he was this, he was that, and, it was just bizarre. But they wound up losing that game by 3 points, and you realize it just shows you how quickly time moves now. Andy Reid's been in Kansas City 7 years. Think about that. You still think of Andy in his days with the Eagles and all that went on there. He's been in Kansas City for 7 years, and he's done an insanely good job for the Chiefs. I mean, 7 years, 7 winning seasons, 6 years in the playoffs, 4 straight now division titles, back-to-back trips to the conference championship game, and now a Super Bowl visit. So they've won double digits all but 1 year where they won 9. They've been in the playoffs every year but 1. They've never had a losing year. And they've strung together 4 straight division titles. And let's be honest, that doesn't happen in the NFL unless your name is New England. 4 straight division titles just doesn't happen. It's just impressive. And now, obviously, a title game, a victory in the title game, and now a chance to finally see if he can win that Super Bowl a week from this coming Sunday in Miami against a very solid San Francisco team that is well-balanced, that is fast, that is very good in terms of pass rush, good defensively, and obviously now has a very potent running game that it has really flexed its muscle with in the postseason with its performance against Minnesota and then against the Packers. You wonder what's going on in Green Bay. Rarely do you see a coach make the statement that LaFleur made. Pettin was a holdover. And the defense this year played pretty well. I've never been a big Pettin fan, but the defense played pretty well this year. And LaFleur basically said he couldn't believe how, and this is a guy who wins, counting the playoffs, wins 14 games this year in his first season. Goes to an NFC title game. That's a heck of a first year. Said he could not believe that his team had so little fire. But he also said that he was upset days later about how badly his team had been outcoached defensively in the game. That's think about it. Here's a guy who won 14 games. His defense and his defensive coordinator got lauded this year for what they did for most of the season. And he came out and said he can't believe how badly his team was outcoached defensively in the game. So you wonder if something's going on there. Penn's a guy that has at times rocked boats, as we know. Just go back to the years with the Jets, where we all know he was one of the biggest leaks of all time. I mean, it was no secret, which obviously unsettled a lot of things with the Jets. But he didn't do a bad job this year. That's fair. His team had some surprising performances from guys they picked up, and their defense was pretty solid. Their offense was more erratic. They did get their lunch twice. Now, you see, he also contradicted his star player, LaFleur did, because Rodgers said, well, there's not a big difference between us and the Packers. And to LaFleur's credit, he said, wait a second. Go look at the two games. They ate our lunch both games. So, yeah, there's a gap between us and them. And you know what? There is. There's a speed gap. The Niners have way too much speed. The Niners have a dominance on the defensive line, and the Niners pushed them all over the building with their offensive line. So, yeah, there is a gap there, and the Packers clearly need a weapon and a little better play on the offensive line. So I agree with LaFleur more about his assessment that there is a gap between the Niners and the Packers. Rodgers downplayed it and said, there's not a big difference between the teams. I disagree. They didn't whip them once. They whipped them soundly twice. And Aaron did what everyone knew he would do. In the fourth quarter, down, he would make some throws that would produce points. And he did that. And that's why I talked about the backdoor cover. Well, the game got too far away from him to do that, and he still almost made that a threat. If it weren't for that, I thought really poorly orchestrated moments after that second score. Number one, I would not have gone for two. There was nothing served there by that, and I don't want a negative play there. And number two, I would not have gone. I would not have onside kick there with that much time left. So there's a chance you easily could have had Rodgers with the ball down to 14, and then you might wind up getting your backdoor cover. Instead, Sherman makes an interception, blah, 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 but they were down 10 anyway. Point is, he's always going to be dangerous late in those games. But I agree with LaFleur and his assessment. There's a gap between those two teams. They didn't kick their rear end once. They kicked their rear end twice. When a team beats you soundly twice, where you look bad both games, you can't talk about there being only a small difference between the two teams. There was a big difference between those teams on Sunday. There was a big difference in those teams when the first time they met. They beat them 37-8. Rodgers had one of the worst games of his career. Clearly, they dominated the Packers this year. But it was surprising, and at least made me at least say, when he said how badly he thought his defense was outcoached in that game. Threw his coordinator and his staff a little bit under the bus for a first-year guy who, obviously, what you do like is that he wasn't complacent. We see a lot of coaches in this league who are happy when they win a couple of games, and they seem very satisfied. This guy won 14 games this year, and he's not satisfied at all, which you like. I mean, you have to like that. 14 games, and he's basically nailing people right and left. That I like. No complacency there. No self-satisfaction that he got to an NFC title game in his first year as a head coach. Yes, he had a great quarterback. We understand that. Who didn't have a Rodgers-type year. Did not. And Rodgers this year showed one thing that I had not seen from him in the past, inaccuracy. He's always been an insanely, deadly accurate passer. This year, he missed a lot of passes. He missed passes in this game last week. So that bears some watching. Okay, the big story tonight, obviously, is finally the debut of a player that I would say is the most hyped player into the NBA since Patrick Ewing, because you can't use Jordan in that regard. First of all, Jordan wasn't as hyped as those guys. Jordan just exploded on the league. people didn't predict this for Jordan as much as just having it happen to them. There were people, if you go back, and they don't like to bring it up because you look pretty foolish, who didn't think he was all that great early in his career. But, they try to hide those tapes. Brian Geltz does the NBA TV, NBA radio. On Twitter, he's at Hoops Critic. He joined us once this year, and he joins us again. Brian, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. Thanks for having me, pal.
All right. First, Zion tonight. But before we get to that, let's get to the Spurs for a second because they're in the game. But there's also, they have not had the season that you thought they'd have or anybody else thought they'd have. And there's rumors that they may be unloading Aldridge and DeRozan, maybe in a big deal with the Heat. What do you hear about that?
Well, I don't know about Aldridge, but I hear that the DeRozan talk is absolutely live. Listen, for as bad as they've played, and they've played badly, Mike, and I told you I thought they'd surprise this year.
Which happens, yeah.
It's but I will tell you that DeRozan is live. He's played very well. And for Miami right now, you look at them.
They've had a great year. They got
a chance to go get the brass ring, Mike. I mean, it's a conference where if you look at every other team in the conference, no one's got more than one star. As much as you want to say the Sixers have 2 stars, they rarely play like stars together. Simmons is not a star with Embiid on the floor. When Embiid's not on the floor, he is. So you look at what the Heat are doing to go grab DeMar DeRozan, because here's the thing about a guy like DeRozan, and this is where it's tough in San Antonio. San Antonio's been a much worse defensive team than I ever thought they would be this year. I thought they'd be better on that end of the floor. But DeRozan is a guy who's never going to be shut down on that end of the floor. Is he terrible? No, he's not.
I don't love him, and he has big wounds from the playoffs.
He certainly does, but you know what? As a number 2 guy behind Jimmy Butler, where he doesn't have to defend the best player on the other end, and he's playing off somebody, and the one thing that we've seen with Jimmy Butler, because if you want to tell me a guy that surprised people this year, the fact is, Jimmy, if you look at what the Sixers are missing and them being where they are in the conference and what the Heat have, because for them being number 2 in the conference where they are, Jimmy Butler's the guy that's made the big difference.
Yep.
Playing with Jimmy
Butler. But also
Butler,
getting those kids who were surprising this year.
No doubt.
Hero has done a great job. He's really been a big surprise.
And Mike. Nunn's very good.
And both, Riley did a great job putting his team together. He really did.
There's no doubt. But you know what? Here's the thing about DeRozan. If he's not the one having to take the big shots in the playoffs and he's playing a supporting role, that's a nice spot for him on a team that really's got a chance to do something.
So you think DeRozan could go? You don't think Aldridge is going anywhere?
I don't think, because you know what? Who's giving you anything for him right now? That's the problem. And if I'm Miami, because here's the thing, when you look at what has to happen salary-wise, like Dragic is the big expiring deal there.
Right.
You got to take an extra year of Dion Waiters and James Johnson. And I just don't see Popovich, R.C. Buford, Brent Barry buying in on that. So to me, DeRozan's very live here come deadline. I'd be surprised if Aldridge goes too, Mike.
Yeah, okay. So you think, but I mean, how about DeRozan to the Heat, Aldridge somewhere else, or no, you think Aldridge stays?
I think Aldridge probably stays. I mean, the thing that's interesting about Aldridge is that the spot, if they really wanted to do something, because Aldridge is, I believe, last year his deal as well. The thing for Aldridge that would be interesting is maybe going back to Portland. The problem is, with the way they've played, I don't know that you make a this-year type of move, and what are you going to give San Antonio that's going to be all that attractive? Now, listen, they have an expiring deal in Whiteside to send back, so they're not going to hurt San Antonio salary-wise. But one thing you got to remember about the Spurs and all this, Mike, Pop never does. He rarely does anything mid-season. Now, he will – the big talk that I heard, and I've been told this by a few front office executives there, is that if they can Pop, if they can compete, Pop wants his team to compete. But I also believe that if they see what they've seen this year and realize the best they can hope for is a first-round exit, at a certain point in time, if you can get some assets in, you bring assets in. And DeRozan's a guy that I think that the Heat would pony up for. I just don't see teams pushing a lot for Aldridge here. Aldridge really this year, it's been a major drop-off athletically more than anything else. And where Pop brought him in and he could do some things defensively his first few years in San Antonio, he's a mess on that end of the floor, Mike.
All right, in the East, as you mentioned, and you got teams which, that are in contention, okay? And I think Philly, if Embiid's healthy, I still think I like him over Milwaukee, but if he's healthy. Now, if he's not, I wouldn't go that way. And Milwaukee plays really well every night in the regular season. We know that. But here's the thing. Who is available other than DeRozan, is there anybody else who is readily available to these teams if they want to upgrade?
I'll give you a needle mover for the Philadelphia 76ers, and I know he's going to be available, and I know that they're going to try to be at the front of the line for him, and that's Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose is on a 2-year, $15 million deal, Mike. The Pistons are going nowhere, and Philly's got a kid who they haven't played at all this season, Zaire Smith, coming off a broken foot, who's worth a shot if I'm the Pistons, and if I'm Philly, because I agree with you. Listen, I was there Christmas Day, and I watched Joel Embiid shut down Giannis defensively, and I believe that the Sixers match up pretty well with them. But the thing that hurts the Sixers is that having that small guard that can create their own shot. You need to be able to, in some crunch time situations, move Ben Simmons off the ball. There's times you're going to want to move Horford to the bench and not have him crowding space with Embiid as well. They don't have that guy to do that with. Derrick Rose is that guy, and his salary is not going to be hard to fit in if you're trading a guy on a rookie scale deal. So to me, I would keep a very close eye on what's happening with Derrick Rose and the Philadelphia 76ers. I think it's a great fit on both ends, and Zaire Smith is the type of kid that if I'm Detroit and I can't get a first-round pick, this is a kid I take a shot on.
Of the teams, and let me say this, folks, we'll have more on this coming up a little later in the program, especially at 6. Eli announcing his retirement now confirmed on Friday, which is the right move for Eli. I had hoped he'd go this route. He will. He'll announce his retirement on Friday, so that's just now being made official. So that's a good thing. You have Toronto, you have Boston, you have Indiana, you have Miami underneath the big two in the East. Which one of those teams do you think, to you, is the most live going forward?
Boston, because I think they're going to make a move for a big guy, Mike. I think they're going to look to bring in, whether it's a Willie Cauley-Stein, a Nerlens Noel, but a defensive-oriented big man to complement what they're doing with Cantor there. Theis is not that guy and has not played well enough to be that guy, and they need that. But Boston surprised me here, man. I didn't think they were going to be as good as they've been. Hayward, what he's been in the lineup, has been much better than he was last year, and Jaylen Brown is one of the most improved players in the league no one's talking about.
And you know what, Kemba Walker, you wouldn't call him a guy who can carry a team, but what he can do is he can carry the fourth quarter for a team. That's the one thing he can do. He can come in the fourth quarter and be your primary guy. He's not going to do it like the great ones do it for 40 minutes, but he'll do it for the quarter for you.
Correct. And here's the other thing about the Celtics that's interesting. Okay, what you're seeing with Milwaukee, what you're seeing with Miami is a lot more zones being played in the league, Mike. You're seeing a lot more of the 2-3 stuff coming out. Boston's a team that can slice a 2-3 up a little bit because of Kemba Walker, because of Tatum, because of Hayward. These are guys that'll shoot over a zone. So where you see, like, Miami will go possession to possession zone, man. I saw Milwaukee crawl their way back in a game against Philly playing the 2-3 zone. Boston is a team that can bust a 2-3 zone. So I just they are one player away, and it's not like you don't have to go get Drummond to get that done. You know what I mean? Like, you can get a bit player there. There's these pogo stick centers are a dime.
Is Drummond leaving since you bring him up? I mean, everybody has him leaving. Is he leaving?
Listen, if you're Drummond, first of all, you're exploring free agency next year, right, which is killing his value to the Pistons. Because the thing is, teams would pony up a first-round pick for Drummond. They got to know they can sign him. Because if you're going to rent him, and at that salary, you got to sacrifice a major player. So what are you going to sacrifice a big player for your team and run the risk of Drummond? And then, so now what I'm hearing is they're not going to get a first for him. 2 seconds a team will pony up for a Drummond rental. But then if you're Detroit, is it worth it to you? Listen, if you're not going to re-sign him, it has to be worth it to you, and I wouldn't re-sign him if I were them. I'd be starting that thing over. So I do think in the end he gets moved somewhere. But that salary, like, the whole league's capped out, and it makes it really hard. So you got to find somebody with that expiring deal to send back to Detroit to be able to do that. It's the wrong cap situation to try to trade a center with that salary coming into this deadline.
I'm talking with Brian Gelsiler. You can get him at Hoops Critic on Twitter. You can watch him on NBA TV and NBA Radio. All right, let's get to tonight. Zion returns. First of all, we know the minutes are going to be guarded. What are we talking about?
20, 22 max. I can't see going more than that. You know what? Griff is and it's just beyond Alvin Gentry, Mike. And you were talking about it as you introduced me. The hype for this kid's enormous.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's insane. It really is.
They want to
insane.
keep him on the floor. And the problem with this, listen, the kid can play. The kid's a very good player. And as much as everybody talks about what he does offensively, I think he's a game changer on the defensive end of the floor. I think he's one of these pick and roll busters out high. And I think that's where
I want to see how far from the basket he can play. Listen, there's no question. Listen, Zach Randolph can get 22 and 10 in this league, okay?
Correct.
So we know what he can do that. The question is, can he move his game out both ways? Can he move his game out and be a defender 15 feet from the floor, play pick and roll? And can he be a guy who can expand his game more than 8 feet from the basket? I know he can dunk the ball. I know he can make a baby hook and bank it in from 3 feet out. But you know what? The league's is past that. Okay, can he move can he move away from the basket and be any kind of efficient player?
Here's what I'll say about it. Let's start offense first. Here's what I'll say about him. He can get to spots he wants to get to. He handles the ball well. He's very athletic for a kid this size.
And he finishes well. He finishes well.
And he finishes great.
Right, except he has no jump shot. He's got a terrible-looking jump shot. He's got a terrible look. Yeah, but, you do need a jump shot in the NBA now. You really do.
It depends. It depends about how good.
Well,
he is
you want to be a great player, though. I mean, if you want to be a great, and he's not a great player, and in the playoffs he gets shut down.
He has in the past, and he's young. Here's the thing about Zion, okay, and this is my big concern for Zion. Is this body type going to survive in the league? I mean, to my understanding,
that's my biggest problem with him.
This is one of these kids, Mike. You got to remind him that when he hits the white, it's the plate. You know what I mean? He likes to eat this.
And you know what? He's going to get bigger and bigger, and he's already big at this age. And knee problems at this age are not going to get less; they're going to get more.
Correct, and that's the big concern with him. They're already reteaching him how to run. That's the worry with him. And listen, David Griffin was in an impossible position with him because you can't pass on him.
No.
Right? You pass on him, you got PR disaster. You're the guy that passed on Zion Williamson. You can't do that. But by the same token, how do you keep the kid healthy?
See, he was flawed. He's flawed because you know what? You don't want a guy who weighs that. And the only guy who had the nerve to say it was Shaquille O'Neal. And, I said it, and I got killed, but I didn't care. But Shaquille O'Neal said it. He said he's going to have trouble in the league because of his size.
That's the big worry. Can he – listen, I think if he plays, he's going to be very good. He's going to be very good. But the problem is, can you stay on the floor? And look at the spot the Pelicans are in now. The playoffs are a remote possibility to them. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
And they've played pretty well lately.
And they have, but they also lost 13 in a row earlier in the year.
Right.
And they have some pretty good players on that team, and he'll fit in there well. But how much are you going to run him here, Mike, when there's no good end to it this year?
Nope.
You want to start next year with him healthy as a horse and go at it with him and Ingram and Ball and Holiday and whoever else you have and be able to do it that way.
And what's a workable weight for him to play at? You see, you want to be – listen, you want a guy who's going to grow into that. First of all, you don't even want a guy who's as thick as LeBron James is, if he can help it. You want him to be Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. You don't want them to be heavy body fat guys. And all right, and you can be thicker like a LeBron, but LeBron has kept himself in insane shape all these years.
Spends $1 million a year in his body, Mike.
Right.
$1 million a year.
And this kid has got to prove that he wants to. If I think he's going to be great, he's going to learn to play not at 285. He's going to learn to play at 250 or 245.
Right. Even 260, I think he'd be okay, but not 285. And the thing is, here's the interesting part about him that worries you a lot. Like, I saw him draft night. A good draft night. You know what I mean? Big. I saw him 2.5 weeks later in Vegas, and he looked like he had a different body on him. And that's how fast he can put on weight.
Absolutely. You know who was like that was Barkley. But Barkley, it was a different league then. It was a completely different league. And Barkley played a game in those days where the three-pointer and playing on the perimeter wasn't part of the game. It was a different league.
And here's the thing about Zion. His big strength defensively is busting pick and roll on a perimeter.
Right.
He can do that well.
And he's got great, powerful hands. He's got incredible, powerful hands. Yes, that's his best thing. You know what the best thing I think about him is, number one, he's got great hands, powerful hands, and number two, he's a very good passer.
Excellent passer. He's got such a well-rounded game. And defensively, you're going to see a forward that has more steals than anybody in the league. Because of how good his hands are, because he deflects balls, he jumps out and hedges well. He does so many things well defensively.
I think he's a bricklayer from anything past 12 feet. I also think he's going to get hurt his whole life.
That's the big problem. The latter, Mike, to me, is the bigger problem because I do think he can get the spots on the floor where he can score. I think the biggest problem is him staying on the floor. If he's not going to be able to stay on the floor, it doesn't really matter. And that's the tough spot that Griffin, the Pelicans are in right
Very tough to coach him. Very tough to have players play around him because now you got to let him get to the spots that he wants to get to. I mean, now it's about him.
You do, and I'll tell you what's interesting, how him and Ingram are going to mesh. Because Ingram's one of these guys that likes spots too, Mike. You know what I mean? Ingram's not just the guy that stands there and spot up. He wants a ball in his hands, and Ingram is very good at getting to those spots and scores well for them. He's had a great year for them. But that Ingram is a guy that, to me, I'm very interested to see how those two, their games mesh, because I do think they're going to take some time to adjust to one. And those are the two best players on that team. They're going to take time to adjust to one another because they're going to be in the same spots with each other and crowding each other until they learn each other a little bit.
And the other thing that's happened too is John Morant's been as good as we all thought he'd be. I mean, he has
Maybe
a chance,
better.
and he's got a chance to be. I thought John Morant was going to be great. So I thought from the beginning, I thought he was going to be a sensation. This league's made for John Morant right now. Absolutely made for him.
Where he surprised me, Mike, is how well he shot the ball.
Yep. I saw him play in college, and I thought he was going to be a sensation in the NBA. I really did.
Yep, it's amazing. And I'll tell you, last week, man, late in the game, he put James Harden in his hip pocket. And there's not people that they just don't do that.
He has everything you'd want. I mean, explosive. He can pass with anybody. He's got great range on a jump shot. I mean, listen, listen, you know that Zion's going to have to go a long way to be as good as John Morant. He really is.
Oh, that's first of all, he's a rookie of the year in the league right now. It's not even close. But the thing is, like, the Morant's his draft comp coming out was Westbrook, right? I mean, that's what everybody said he was.
Yeah.
Westbrook never. I'm not sure Westbrook shoots it like this now.
Never,
never. Well he's shooting
Can't shoot it as well as him. There's no. Listen, Westbrook is an athletic freak. But he's never been a great shooter.
Correct, but this kid's an athletic freak also.
Yes.
And some of the passes that he throws, the thing about Morant is his shot selection smart, Mike. He's not forcing a lot of bad ones. He knows he can break people down off the bounce. That's a fun young team, man. That Jaren Jackson Jr. They got some good. Brandon.
So what's fair? Forget the craziness. What's fair for? Biggest thing you want to know about Zion is in the last 40 games of the season here, how many games does he play, number one? How many minutes does he average, number two? And then what do you think's fair for him to put up a night?
All right, so I figure Zion's going to play in the neighborhood of 22 to 24 minutes a game over the course of the rest of the season. With 40 games there, I figure he'll play in about 30 of them. For those 30 games, I would think he'll average somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 and 8.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's right.
Fair.
That's what I'm not
That's
looking.
fair.
Listen, if he's playing 34 minutes a night, he's a 23-12 guy. That's who he can be, But he's not going to be that here. They're not going to let him be that here.
No.
They're too smart for that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So it's going to be very interesting. Now let's talk a little bit about the West for a second. Number one, how good you think Utah is?
I think Utah's really good. Listen, and this is Quinn Snyder's so smart. You get Conley back, you bring Conley off the bench. Joe Ingles has played so well with that group in the starting lineup. They've complemented Mitchell really well. And maybe one of the best free agent signings no one's talked about is Bogdanovich. He has him and Royce O'Neal in that front court are a new age front court in the NBA in terms of what you have. They both defend well on the perimeter. O'Neal's an excellent defensive player. Bogdanovich, very good spot up shooter, gets his own shot. Ingles is really good at involving people. And you know what? You got a nice little bench mob now with Conley and the Clarkson trade, Mike. Since they acquired Jordan Clarkson, this team has taken off having him as a bench weapon. Listen, Quinn Snyder's a really good coach. They're going to be a very tough out in the playoffs in a Western Conference. Behind the Clippers and the Lakers right now, I got to tell you, I think they're the third team in the West. I'm not sure how close it is either.
All right, tell me this. We're talking with Brian Geltzeiler of NBA TV and Radio. You can get him at Hoops Critic. All right. Forget everyone talking about the Lakers getting anybody who has to play the point. You have a point. His name is LeBron James, okay?
Correct.
They need a catch-and-shoot guy, and they need a mid-range. I'll tell you who they need, and I don't know if he's gettable. Tell me right now. You know what player I want them to add to their team? Iguodala.
Here's the problem.
He'd be perfect for them. He could defend. He can make a three, and he's clutch. Agreed. He's perfect. Can they get him?
Only if he's bought out, because they're not going to be able to get him in the trade market. Because if you're going to get him in the trade market, you're going to have to sacrifice Danny Green, and that's not happening. So and the problem, I'll tell you, with getting him in the trade, with getting him in a buyout, if he goes to buyout, he's going to the Lakers. That's the first place he goes. He's running there if they get him. If he gets bought out, the problem is if you're Dallas and you have the Courtney Lee expiring deal, and you can throw a couple of seconds into Memphis, and you see him where Dallas is right now. He fits pretty well there, too, and they have the ability to get him in a trade and get something for Memphis with him, and that's the big danger to the Lakers. I agree with you. I think he's the perfect player there.
But because he can play D, because he can play D, he's clutch, and he can catch and shoot, and that's what they need, a catch and shoot player first. I can live with – listen, I can get the other guys to play enough D that LeBron no longer can shut down a big offensive player. We know that. That you can't ask him to do that anymore and do everything else. He can't do both. So that's the one concession to age. He cannot play the top guy on the other end of the floor. That's over. So you got to have someone else help him there on the perimeter defender. The question is, can they get someone to help a little bit there? But more importantly, can they get a catch and shoot guy? That's what they really need.
They could use that. Listen, the other guy that would be fantastic for them will be J.J. Redick.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I don't think you're going to see they'd have to. The salaries would be a little bit difficult, and there's a guy they'd have to sacrifice to get that they don't want to sacrifice.
Who's that?
If I told you this,
Danny Green. They're not going to sacrifice Danny Green. They can't.
No, they're not, and they're not going to sacrifice Caldwell Pope.
He's played well for them.
He's played great.
Yeah, he's been important for them. They need him. No, I agree.
They need him.
I agree.
They would sacrifice Avery Bradley, but that's not enough money going out. So that's your problem. Because here's the other thing that was interesting, and they rolled this out the other night against Houston on Saturday night in the showcase game. Okay, they put Westbrook hurt him in the first half. They put Kuzma on Westbrook in the second half. It was Rondo's idea, and it worked.
I tell you, Kuzma's okay. He's okay. He
is,
and he and the big man have worked well, better than I thought they would. But they're going to collide in the postseason, and I think there's in the postseason. There's not enough minutes where one of them's off the floor, where they're going to get in each other's way in the postseason. That's the problem.
Well, the problem is that the biggest problem that you have is that Anthony Davis is going to have to acquiesce in a postseason.
He's going to have to. He's going to have to.
He doesn't want to, and
he has to. If they're going to win, he has to.
Correct, and they've gotten great minutes at center from McGee and Howard. They both played terrific for them.
And I hate Howard, but he's played okay there, and I can't stand Howard.
Which I understand. He's been better than okay. He's been super for them this year in the role. Played 20 minutes a game. He's been fantastic.
Admit it. I got to admit, I can't stand the guy. He's my least favorite player, but I agree he's played well there.
He really has. So that's but again, the three best players on this team are still LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Kuzma. So you got to figure out a way to get them on the floor in big spots together.
But the unsung hero has been Pope.
Pope's been terrific. He's been great for them, and that's the thing. You're not going to sacrifice Pope, and you're not going to sacrifice Danny Green. So they
probably get nothing, is what it is. So is Iguodala a long shot in your mind?
No, I think Iguodala is likely to get bought out because I just don't know that what's going to happen with Dallas, and Dallas may use the Lee contract to try to go in another direction for somebody else. Dallas sustained a significant injury last night with Dwight Powell. Dwight Powell, as much as he's not a guy people know about, he's somewhat of an important player to how they operate, their culture. He was helping Porzingis. It wouldn't surprise me if they used that Courtney Lee expiring deal to try to go out and get somebody to replace that, which would mitigate them in Iguodala. But to me, that's the only team that can keep Iguodala from the Lakers, because otherwise Memphis is going to buy him out because it makes no sense otherwise. Listen, I'll tell you this, Memphis isn't happy with Andre Iguodala and how he's handled this. It would have been he should have done what Chris Paul did, Mike, and showed up and helped young guys and been a positive influence there.
Right, and he hasn't been.
To not show up and say, I'm not playing because I don't want to play for this team. And listen, you're getting paid, and Memphis has been somewhat magnanimous about it. I know they haven't been happy about it, but me personally, I don't like that.
You can't be above it.
That's not a professional thing to do.
I totally agree. Listen, we know what he is in the playoffs. He's this generation's Robert Horry. We understand what he is. But again, you got to pay your dues in the regular season. I agree. Let me ask you this, though. Knowing now what Dallas does about how good Doncic is, and knowing everything else, and knowing what they know now about Porzingis, would they still make the Porzingis trade?
Yes.
You think they would? So you don't think they're disillusioned with Porzingis and how much work he is in every way?
I don't think they are for one reason. There's a clear understanding on their part that because see, Porzingis hasn't played great offensively, and he's a pain in the backside. We know that.
He's a royal pain. That's what everyone
really
knows.
Is.
Yes,
he really is. The only thing with him, I'll tell you, is they're a significantly better defensive team with him on the floor.
But he's always hurt too.
The problem, it's all of it is a problem. But when
and he's not one of nature's, as you know, it's not telling tales. He's not one of nature's noblemen. Okay.
No, he is not. Not even a little bit. But here's the thing, Mike. Knowing Doncic is going to be this good, the unprotected pick they gave the Knicks is not going to be a high pick. So that becomes a lower pick.
Doncic isn't good. He's great. I mean, he's going to be an immortal NBA player.
He is, and they wanted Dennis Smith Jr. far away from Doncic, Mike. They didn't want him when taking the ball away from him.
They're right.
And they've been right. They've been right. So when you look at all that, I think they make the deal and they sign Porzingis to the deal all over again, where you roll the dice and figure he's healthy. Because again, it hasn't been offensively, he hasn't been great this year, but he's done some things defensively for that team that they're much lesser without him on the floor.
What was going on with Jokic early in the season? He wasn't playing well. He finally seemed like he knocked it into gear now. But what was going on with him early in the season?
Not in shape, Mike.
Is that it?
Shape.
Okay.
He's heavy. I mean, I always like to joke. I'm like, you can't. How are you going to get behind an NBA player who's got a body like me, right? I mean, this is a guy who is if he ever got himself in awesome condition, he'd be the best center in the league. But he carries a lot of extra weight on him, and at nights he was tired. And listen, Mike Malone is a coach who's going to make you play through that. Mike Malone was not going to baby him through that. And Mike Malone is
I like that. And his numbers were down in every category through the first 30 games. Every category he was down.
Yeah, and they've been better since he's picked it up. And there's a lot of pressure on him because Jamal Murray's hurt. So we got to see what happens there. But yeah, this is about conditioning to him. And listen, he needs to be a lot more serious about that. He really does. If he's going to take his game to the next level, and we talked earlier about
he's got the ability
to.
He's got the ability to.
He does. Yeah. Jaylen Brown, I mentioned you, got paid and got better and came out determined. Jokic got paid and got heavier, and that's not good. So listen, he's played himself into shape. He's still an excellent player, but that's something to bear watching as we go into next offseason. Now again, he'll be playing for Serbia in the Olympics, so we'll see if that helps keep him in shape. But he's got to show up to training camp.
Do you think the Clippers or Lakers are good enough to win right now, the whole thing as is, or do you think they both need to fine-tune?
I think they're both good enough. And I think the big problem, listen, is the Lakers don't match up great with the Clippers.
No, they don't.
They don't. But there's one issue the Clippers have. And I think when you look into the deadline, it's going to be very interesting to see if the Clippers address this. It is the ability. Listen, the Clippers are going to finish games with Montrezl Harrell on the floor. Montrezl Harrell is one of their 5 best players. If you are going to go up against the Los Angeles Lakers, you're going to have Harrell defend Anthony Davis. That's not a good matchup.
Well, that's where you have to take advantage of. But the problem is, and flip it, and this is what you're talking about, is they have too many perimeter players for the Lakers.
They do. They do. Listen, you're going to match. You're going to have to put LeBron on one of Leonard or George.
Yeah, he has to. He can't get a tie. He can't get a tie in one of those because they're not going to win the games where he gets a tie. So if they both go for 30 that night, it's not going to help the Lakers.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing: Danny Green historically has been really good at defending point guards. Is he too old to deal with Lou Williams right now? Maybe.
I think he is probably.
Maybe.
I think listen, they hurt them on the perimeter. That's the problem. The Lakers can't match up with them on the perimeter. That's the one team they don't want to face. They want someone else to beat the Clippers.
Yep, and the one guy in the league, and listen, Mike, I have the utmost admiration for LeBron James, one of the greatest players ever to play this game. I have him at 4th, okay, in terms of all-time players. The guy's incredible. I can't say enough great things about him, but you know what? There's one guy in the league that's scarier in the playoffs than he is right now, and it's Kawhi Leonard.
Well, right now, right now at this stage of his life is as complete. I'm going to admit off last year, he's as complete as LeBron is. I got to see him do it again, but he might be as complete as LeBron is right now. He really might.
I was in LA last week, Mike, and I watched him. It's what he does.
Well, LeBron just can't do it on the defensive end anymore. He's not the same on that end. He's the same on the other end. He's just not the same on that end. He'll still rebound. He'll still get his assists. He just can't guard anybody and stop them anymore. That's the one thing.
And here's the other thing, Mike. The game's played so much behind the three-point line and in the restricted area in the paint so much these days. And when you're playing against a really good defense, you have to be able to get good looks in the mid-range and be able to knock them down. There's no one in the league better than that than Kawhi.
No,
he gets
I
to
agree.
his spots in the mid-range and knocks them down. And when you want to defend a team, listen, the way teams are taking threes can bury you. So you're getting those looks in the mid-range. Kawhi
And George is really
there.
dangerous too. When he
gets hot, he's tough.
He's
and
crazy.
The other thing is this. This is the other thing the Clippers have. Okay, two guys in the league right now that historically have been the best at defending LeBron James are Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and they can rotate those two on him, and that makes it life tougher on LeBron offensively, knowing that he's going to have a premium defender on him at all times.
Hey, like I said, I think the one team that can keep the Lakers out of the finals is the Clippers, and they need someone else to knock the Clippers off right now. I really believe that. They don't match up well with them because they have got to accentuate the Davis matchup on the offensive end in that
Absolutely.
matchup. They don't have anybody to play Davis. They need Davis to go off in those games.
No doubt. And, Mike, I'll say this. I think the Clippers would struggle more with a team like the Jazz than they will with the Lakers.
I agree.
I really do.
No, I agree.
Really do.
And the Jazz are tough. I mean, the Jazz are really tough.
Because the way they defend, Mike, the big guy is such a presence as they funnel everything towards him. So they'll get out in the three-point line for you, and they will force you, and Gobert will come meet you on the perimeter, and he is so long, and they help out so well on the weak side that they just smother you. You don't get any kind of good looks against them if they don't want you to get them. It's their half-court defense, which is we know what the playoffs are all about. It can be smothering. When we talk about playing in the mid-range, they will be a team. Gobert can help smother Kawhi Leonard in the mid-range and force the ball out of his hands.
So right now, your finals would be Clippers, Bucks, or Clippers, Sixers?
I still say Clippers, Sixers. I'm hesitant, and I say that for one reason. I really think they're going to get Rose. I think it just
will the
makes
Bucks
too much
make a
sense
change before? Will they add something before the deadline?
They're going to try the one they have. Ilyasova's got a partially guaranteed deal next year, and I think it's like, they add him like $9-10 million this year. So they're going to try to make a move for somebody. And I do know that ownership group at this stage, considering that keeping Giannis is what the stakes are in 2021, if they have to go into the tax, they won't think twice. So I do think they figure out a move. What I have heard for them, which is interesting, which would really make them very good, is that if Redick's out there, they're going to do everything they can to get him and bring him to Milwaukee. And they have the Ilyasova is the right contract to do that. And then when you look at some of their young guys, DiVincenzo, who's played very well for them.
I love DiVincenzo. I love DiVincenzo.
Oh, he's
I love him. I love him.
And played a great role for them. And then like DJ Wilson's a guy I'm not a fan of. A lot of people around the league like him. Coach Bud hasn't really taken to him in Milwaukee. But you look at those two guys, one of those two guys, and maybe Griff wants to get his hands on that in a first-round pick, and all of a sudden J.J. Redick's in Milwaukee.
Who's the most improved player? To me, it's between two guys. Is it Siakam or is it Booker? Who's the most improved player in the league?
Interesting. I mean, I actually believe
Booker's become a crazy star.
Booker's fantastic. And listen,
he's averaging over 30 points a game in his last, 20-something games? He's averaging over 30 points a game?
He has. He's been fantastic. I can't rush to give it to Siakam. It's interesting because the two kids I look at, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and OKC.
Oh, yeah, he's improved a lot too. You're right. He has.
A ton.
And he's had a couple of triple-doubles. He's been very good. But Siakam's become a huge stud. He really has.
Huge stud. But he also missed 11 games too, so it's tough to throw that in right now.
Booker has been unstoppable of late.
Yeah, Monty Williamson has done a great job with getting Devin Booker to be who he is right now.
Because now he's filling up the box score, too. He's getting rebounds. He's getting assists.
Everything.
He's doing everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Listen, either him and Monty were going to be, either they were going to work great or not work well at all, and they've worked great together. The other guy I throw into that conversation is Bam Adebayo, Mike. He's
Hey, Riley did a great job with those guys. With him and Hero, too. If you watched Kentucky last year, you knew Hero could shoot. Riley made a great – listen, he went to his alma mater and he found a player. I mean, that was a very smart move. It really was.
It was, and he's kept them in the right role. So the kids look great, but at no point in time has he put that added pressure on them, having them start. You know what? None was comfortable starting the way it's all worked out. And keep one thing in mind about that team, even if they don't make a DeRozan deal or some other kind of deal that's out there for them, they're going to get Justice Winslow back.
That shows you how good Riley is. Look what he's done with that team. That's a great job. That's a great job. It really is.
Listen, you looked at them, and it's
with
funny.
Spare parts. I mean, with spare parts.
Riley made a whole bunch of mistakes in the last couple of years, Mike. The Olynyk contract wasn't wonderful. Waiters, Johnson, how he handled Whiteside and Wade. But you look at how he landed on his feet here, and we talk about player development, Mike, all right?
Yep.
Player development programs that grow guys. Duncan Robinson. I mean, are you kidding me? Riley.
The coach is underrated, too. Really underrated.
He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's very underrated. He's in Riley's shadow, but he's very underrated. He really is.
The thing about that guy, never gets too high, never gets too low. It's all even keel. When things are bad, they're never that bad. When things are good, he reminds you how bad they can get. He's fantastic that way. But, Mike, you look at player development programs. Listen, look at Gilgeous-Alexander in OKC. He's been in 2 teams with excellent player development programs, Clippers and now OKC. Remember him and Kevin Knox as draft prospects? The 2 of them came out together on the same level, right?
Yep.
2 of them were even. Okay,
look at him
where
now.
Gilgeous-Alexander's gone,
look
and look where Kevin Knox has gone.
Oh, please, look at
Context is everything. The right player development program can make or break a young player.
Very good point. All right, thanks for your help today. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Thank
Always,
you.
Mike.
My pleasure.
Do it again soon. Take care,
pal. Brian Geldseiler. So tonight, Zion makes his, I don't want to say return, let's call it his debut, a little late after the injury. About 20 minutes of play tonight. Let's see what happens. They're playing the Spurs. Trades swirling around the Spurs, who are still 5 games under 500. 2 stories right now. 2 stories. We'll deal with both of them on the Fan at 6 o'clock. Number 1, the Mets, and they're getting ready to name a new manager. We'll talk about him. And the announcement just a couple of minutes ago, or the leak a couple of minutes ago that now is, I guess, official, that Eli will announce his retirement on Friday. I think he's made the right move here. I think that is the positive move. I know he didn't want to go anywhere else as a backup. The league has gone clearly to the more mobile quarterback. You're seeing that now. And these were rough playoffs for Rodgers. These were rough playoffs for Brady. These were rough playoffs for Breeze. They might not be around that much longer. And could be over for Rivers. He'd be looking for a team. Who knows about Roethlisberger? And Eli now calls it a career. And in my mind, a Hall of Fame career, but he will call it a career on Friday. So we know that's coming up. We'll deal with all that on the Fan coming up in just 10 minutes when we hit WFAN in New York at 6 o'clock. We mentioned if you haven't paid attention to John Morant and you start to pay attention to the NBA now, check out this kid. You will be, he's electrifying. He's unbelievable with the performance that he's had. And there was so much hype around Zion, but Morant has skills that are absolutely perfect for the league now. Players like him are going to be such enormous figures in the league because that's how the league is built now. The 3 has become such a part and parcel of this league. It is as big a part of the league as anything that is going on. That's all there is to it. Play the 3, defend the 3. It has to be played that way. There's no way around it. The perimeter game, the ability to play on the perimeter, the rules that protect the player on the perimeter. You can't touch a player on the perimeter. You can't stop his progress on the perimeter. So to have an electrifying player who can pass and shoot and have the kind of speed and hops that Morant has, that's why you're seeing the season that he's having this year. And if you haven't paid attention to Booker and Phoenix, where the team is starting to emerge, they're another year away and one more player away from being a playoff team every year. Kid out of Arizona has become a solid player. Oubre's given them another good player. And Booker's gone crazy. He's averaged like 30 points a game in his last 25 games. And he's filling it up. The other night against the Sixers, he always plays well in the Boston Garden, but he had 40 points and 10 assists and like 8 rebounds. I mean, he's filling up the box score, and he's a lethal, absolutely lethal shooter. I mean, he is a quintessential, just jump shooter. From anywhere, from 2, from 3, from anywhere. He's just become a lethal scorer without any question. And, anytime, I understand for the Knicks, these are such bad days. And there are so few nights that you would even call interesting at Madison Square Garden. But anytime LeBron James comes to New York, it's a big deal. It just is. They're coming in off a pounding. They beat the Rockets on Saturday night. The Rockets have been playing terribly. They beat the Rockets the other night without Davis. They went up without Davis and banged up Boston, and Boston was in a terrible slump. And Boston rushed Walker and Brown back for that game because they had been beat up by the Suns on Saturday night. Suns led from start to finish and beat them fairly easily. And the game got close late, but it was never a close game. And Booker had, I think, 39 in the game. They got whipped by 30 points by the Celtics the other night. So now they come to New York looking for a little revenge, looking to get back on the winning ways, looking to showcase things as they do in New York. So that will be the scene tonight as LeBron graces the Garden. And whenever he does, it is a very, very big deal. No question about it. Plus, you know what? And we haven't mentioned this at all either, but you have the New Jersey teams in college basketball playing very well. Seton Hall beat St. John's, a tough game on the weekend. Classic, old-fashioned Big East game. And Seton Hall came from like 13 back. Tonight, they will take on Providence at home, and they are ranked number 10 in the country. And Rutgers is ranked. So Pikel's done a heck of a job with the Scarlet Knights. They're ranked, and they go to Iowa tonight. Now, this will be a very hard game for Rutgers because now Iowa going to places like, and I've been in that arena, playing in places like Iowa, playing in places like Illinois, playing at Purdue. Those places are murder to play. Places full. Their fans love. They're rabid basketball fans. The program's good. It's good every year. They're ranked. Rutgers ranked. Now they're going to take Rutgers seriously. So now Rutgers is going to find out how the other half lives. Not going to sneak up on anybody anymore in their building. They're not going to sneak up on anybody. Now they've arrived. So that's what comes with getting ranked. Now people notice you. Now your game. Oh, wait a second. There's a ranked team coming in here. So tonight it's a battle of ranked teams when Rutgers goes to Iowa. And that will be a very, very tough game. And Seton Hall, I had Jay Wright on the other day. You might have heard him. And they beat Butler pretty soundly. They had not been playing well, but they beat Butler. They blew a lead at DePaul and won the game. They played UConn in a close game, didn't play well. Then they played Butler last night and played really well. They're back in the top 10. So you got two teams in the Big East in the top 10 right now.
Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM, WFAN.
All right, so on this Wednesday evening, it's a hello and a goodbye. We first finally will say goodbye to Eli Manning. We said goodbye to him on the field this year. This was the right move. It's the move that I hope to see for Eli Manning. And now there's no more, anguish. There's no more losing. There's no more terrible end of the career. There's no more, woeful days, with an inept team that went on. There's no more bad coaching and bad decision making. There's no more any of that. Now it's about the entire career. Now it's about just taking your place among the people who have graced the Giants through the years. And that is how now Eli will be viewed as he goes into the history books. Obviously, he would have liked to rewrite the end of this career. So would the Giants. So would Tom Coughlin. Like I said many times, if you could go back and sit down with the Giants after they won the second Super Bowl, which they didn't expect to win, okay? After they win the second Super Bowl and they are walking on air, and I remember telling Archie at the time, Eli is now golden forever. after the second one. And you know what? It wasn't true. Because the losing got to such an extreme that it actually wore the fan base out. The fan base would have allowed him a year of losing or 2 years of losing. They were not expecting the prolific losing, the excruciating losing that came first to Tom and then to Eli, even after Tom left, and Eli withstood two guys who were just bad coaches and a front office that was clueless and an ownership that lost its way. So he found himself in a very strong organization that he, through his father and the people who run the Manning family, orchestrated. We know at the time of that draft, Eli orchestrated a move to basically to the Giants. He wanted to come to the Giants. He did not want to play in San Diego. He wanted to play for the Giants. His father wanted him with the Giants, and obviously we know how it turned out. He always said to me, Peyton wasn't made for New York, but Eli was. And he was right about that. He knew his kids. He always said Eli was made for New York. He said Eli let anything roll off his back. And Eli, his whole career, did let everything roll off his back. And he had to let, at the end, a lot roll off his back. But he handled that stuff with a coolness under pressure. And the thing that I will always remember about Eli was at his best when things were most chaotic, when there was the most pressure, when there was so much to be won, so much to be gained, and so much pressure on everybody out there. I mean, walking into Dallas and being down 14-3 in a playoff game, going into San Francisco and playing a team that was, nasty on defense, and in one of the most punishing games that I ever saw, he stood in there and led that team to victory. Or going into Green Bay on a frigid day where they figured, hey, nobody plays against us in this weather, and watching him play pitch and catch with a receiver that they dared to single cover the entire game. And he sat there and played pitch and catch and outplayed one of the great cold weather quarterbacks. So, it happened time and time again. And it happened in the biggest spots. And then it happened twice. Once to stop a train that people thought was unstoppable against the Pats. And both times, when you think about it, and this, as the years go on, I think, have not given this enough attention. This team, his teams, not only beat the Pats twice, they came from behind in the fourth quarter both times to beat the favorite Patriots, once to beat the unbeatable team. Never forget Junior Seau waving that flag, waving that towel. One more stands, one more stop, one more stop. Wasn't to be. And he made plays and brilliant throws and brilliant plays in those games in the fourth quarter, and then set himself up with something that only a handful of guys had done. There's 5 players who are two-time Super Bowl winning MVP quarterbacks in this league. 2. There's 5 of them that have won 2 or more. Brady and Montana, of course. Bradshaw and Starr, the others. That's it. 5 guys. Start listing the quarterbacks who haven't done it. His brother hasn't done it. Dan Marino hasn't done it. John Elway hasn't done it. Troy Aikman hasn't done it. Brett Favre hasn't done it. 5 who are 2-time Super Bowl MVP winning quarterbacks in the history of the league in 53 years of Super Bowls. 5 guys. One of them's Eli. Maybe that bothers some people, but it's a fact. And I've said this many times. Tom Coughlin and Eli Manning changed the face of the NFL, and they changed the history of the NFL, because the Pats and Brady and Belichick were headed to a place that nobody could have ever touched them. if they didn't lose the 2 games to the Giants. And we know they got handed a couple of Super Bowls that were puzzling, all right? What Seattle did on the goal line, what the Falcons did, they should have lost both those games. I understand that. But the Eagles beat them. But twice before that, the Giants stopped them. And they stopped the undefeated team, which crushed them. They wanted that so much. And he stood in the way of that. And he was the reason, that in the pass rush, he was the reason why it didn't happen. And to take your team and go look at his numbers in the fourth quarter of those games, they're impeccable. And so are the throws that he made. This was a guy who came up big when there were big things to be won. Was he a great player day in and day out? No. He was a good, solid quarterback day in and day out. He was a great quarterback when the greatness was needed. I understand you wanted more playoff appearances. Okay. You can't tell me you wanted more Super Bowls because you know what? There aren't a lot of guys who have those. There's a whole lot of players. Aaron Rodgers, for all his greatness, has won 1 Super Bowl. Drew Brees has a truckload of records he can plow into Canton. He's won 1 Super Bowl. 1 Super Bowl. Brett Favre won 1 Super Bowl. Was a 3-time, won the MVP 3 years in a row. He won 1 Super Bowl. Dan Marino never won any. Neither did Dan Fouts. And we can go down the list of all the guys who didn't. So when you think about that, and you think about the fact that the Pats led those games in the fourth quarter of both games, he had to take his team into the huddle and look across at the Pats, and they were losing in the fourth quarter, and they came back and took the lead in the fourth quarter and won the game. And that's special. And those are special wins. And he takes those, and those are his, as is all the durability and all the TD passes and all the yardage and all the things that he brought to the job and the class and the dignity that he brought to the position for 16 years. That's what should be remembered on Friday. He's earned all that. All that other stuff now, it slowly dissolves. Yeah, it's part of his history. I understand that. It wasn't pretty here the last couple of years. We know that. And he lost his job in the last year, which I'm sure wasn't pretty and wasn't easy for him to take, but he took it and handled it the same way he handled everything else, with a grace and with a dignity and with a team-first approach. And you know what? If you don't see now how rare that team-first approach is, and also know how rare it is to have somebody who can rise to the occasion and win championships, well, you know what? Look around. There are all the teams around here that don't win championships. And then realize how special those 2 are in 16 years. Back after this. Luis Rojas, who is going to be the Met manager. The fact that he's replacing another choice means nothing. His background is a positive from a standpoint of he's from a baseball family, which I'm sure offers him some perspective. He is a half-brother of Moses Alou. He is a son of Felipe Alou, who had a lot of kids. Felipe Alou was a very classy baseball player who, as you know, played for the Yankees a long time ago for a couple of years. I was very impressed with Felipe Alou when he played here. He was a really classy player. One of the famed Alou brothers, if you remember the Alou brothers from the Giants, Matty and Felipe and Jesus. The Alou brothers all coming up with the Giants, all outfielders. Felipe was the best player of the group. Matty had a lot of good years with the big bat and, punching the ball over the shortstop's head and hitting 340. But Felipe was the classiest player of the bunch, especially had some good years with the Braves. And Felipe went on to be a longtime manager. And as I mentioned to you, that Pedro Martinez has credited Felipe Alou with being the guy who really made his career because he turned him into a starting pitcher when everyone else didn't want to. Ross has paid his dues. The one issue I would have, I know the things I've heard about him, but I do not know him. I've never spoken to him. I know you've heard some players already chime in that they like him, and some of them have dealt with him. A key in that room will be, because it's a team that is in need of leadership right now, because it's a team that's on the brink of winning if it's handled right. A key there will be two things. Number one, you want to have Robbie Cano on your side, because Robbie Cano has an incredible amount of influence in that room. And number two, you have to make sure you have some kind of working deal with Cespedes, because Cespedes can be an issue if now he's going to be less of an issue this year because he no longer is the guy who makes the team go, but he can be an issue. But I think Cano is the key, because Cano is really the guy who, I think, from what I noticed about that team, is clearly Cano has an enormous leadership role with that team. The issue I would have with him is the Mets have put him in a very tough spot. It's a team that needs strong handling in a town that is not easy to deal with, and in a situation where there's a lot to deal with. It's going to be a lot for somebody to step in and handle at a very late date, very quickly, inheriting a staff. I doubt there's going to be wholesale changes on the staff. So inheriting a staff and inheriting a position a couple of weeks before pitches and catches. Not an easy way to get your first job. Not the way you want to get your first job. If a team was ever set up that it was in need of a firm hand and a veteran manager, this was the team. Considering all the circumstances, the way they unfolded and everything else. But you know that is not what the Mets wanted. That is not what Brody wants. Brody wants to be able to have he and his people walk in and suggest, hey, here's what lineup we like tonight, or here's what we think about tonight's game, and not have the manager say, you know what, I'm going out on the field, leave me alone. All right? They don't want that. They don't want a guy that is going to say, you know what, I make the lineup, I handle the team, you do what you do, I'll do what I do. They want to be involved. They want, as they call it, collaborative. No, they don't. They want a guy who's going to listen to them. Let's be honest. They want one of these managers now who, in accepting the job, is going to be willing to have a lineup that they suggest for your review before the game. You know, when you sit down that day, the printout will be at your desk at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for tonight's game. And here's what we think the lineup should be tonight. Well, some managers are going to say, you know what, don't even bother sending that tomorrow. They don't want that. They want collaborative. They want to be able to walk in and have those discussions and have their analytical people be able to walk in and make this suggestion or that suggestion or this suggestion and not have the feeling that I should never have opened my mouth. They wanted to feel that that is accepted, not only accepted, welcomed. That's what they're looking for. That's what they found by giving a guy like this an opportunity now. Is he ready? When is anybody ready to become a manager, or when is anybody ready to become a head coach? We don't know what's rubbed off on Rojas. We don't know how his father's rubbed off on him. We don't know how his experiences are rubbed off on him. We don't know how his baseball experiences are rubbed off on him. We're going to find out. We're going to see how he handles discipline. We're going to see how he handles pressure. We're going to see how he handles a losing streak, how he handles the media. He's got what I understand to be fairly strong or even strong communicative skills. That's fine. But he has been put in a tough spot where there's a lot to deal with in a very short amount of time and a lot of ground to cover. So my point is, any time when the Yankees brought in Boone, when the Mets brought in Beltran, when somebody brought in Cora, the first time anybody gave any manager his first job, there was the idea that we'll see. You just don't know which one's going to be good and which one's not. No one ever said, "Oh, this guy, this is it. This guy can't miss." That person doesn't exist. There's no perfect background that makes you the can't miss manager. I remember when they gave the Dodger job to Walter Austin, everyone said, "Oh man, he won't last a year." Walter Austin, yeah, he lasted 25 straight 1-year contracts. So you don't know. He may grow into become a great skipper. You don't know that. But what you can say reasonably is this is a team that needs very firm handling right now. This is a team that needs to really build and really change some things like the bullpen. Make some very hard decisions like Cespedes. What the outfield configuration will be. How much you play Cano. I'm sure Alonso and McNeil will be very easy guys for him to handle. He's got a pitching staff that's delicate. He's got a bullpen that needs an incredible makeover. He's got a closer who had a nightmare. And he's got a former star who's no longer the man who wants to have a big year. So there's a lot there. This is not going to be an easy job for him. But can I sit here and say he's absolutely the wrong choice? There's no right or wrong choice. Clearly, let's be honest, they were not hiring an accomplished manager. We know that. Brody is right now got the keys, and he is not hiring an accomplished manager. He wants input into what's going on here while he's in charge. And we'll wait to see in the years to come if he stays in charge. There's going to be a new owner in place within a reasonable amount of time. We'll see what impact, and he's going to bring some impact. There's no question. When you're a guy who has accomplished what he's accomplished, you don't do it by not flipping over some things. So there's going to be some changes when that happens. If there's no success in the early steps, we'll see what this early step takes them. So, do I think a unproven first-time manager was the right fix for this moment? I do not. But I never thought for a second that they were going to hire a veteran manager, not for a second. So I knew it was going to be a guy who had not managed before. So with that being the case, it doesn't matter which one is the right one. The right one is the guy who got the job. We'll see if he's the right one. Does this mean that this guy's automatically going to be a better manager than Mickey Callaway? We don't know that. We have no way of knowing. We're going to find out together. It all comes down to the same thing. It comes down to putting the pieces in the right place, having the right tools to work with, hoping that the front office gives you a complete team, and then putting the pieces together and getting them all to work together. And this is a team that's going to be in need of strong handling, especially in that bullpen, where there are so many questions to answer. So we'll see. Again, do I think, would I have hired? I would say this. We knew they were going to hire him. We knew they were going to go this route. This makes it harder, not easier. There's more of a chance this guy will be unsuccessful than a veteran manager would be. If you gave George Roddy this team, would I think he had a better chance to do well right off the bat? Yes, I would. If you gave this team to Buck Showalter, would I think he had a better chance to do well right off the bat? Yes, I would. That doesn't mean they'd be the perfect fit long term. What I'm telling you is that they would do better in year one. There's going to be some learning curves here. There's going to be some things that a manager has to go through for the first time. And we'll see. Now, again, a lot of people didn't like the Beltran hire for the same reason. He brought a different set of problems to the experience. But he still was going to be a first-time manager. So we'll see. We'll all learn and watch together. To me, I take it from just watching him from day one. Let's see what happens. No preconceived notions about what his performance will be. We'll find out. But he did walk into, I hope with eyes open, what will be a very, very tough job. This is not going to be an easy job this year with this team. With everything that's happened and with the things that have to go right and with expectations where they are, this is not an easy spot for a first-year manager. Now, we'll see if he's up to the challenge. So we say goodbye to someone who did exactly what you would hope he did. The day the Giants drafted Eli Manning, you hoped he would do what he did. Lead you twice to the top of the sport. Give you moments that you will never forget. That's what you hope you always get from the new guy, whether it's your new quarterback or your new manager. Now we'll see as we say goodbye to him and a new face shows up on the horizon. Now we'll see what he brings to the city. He should be as lucky and as fortunate and as successful as the guy who's going out on Friday. We'll see you tomorrow.